Okay, here we are for Art Worlds Part 3. Yeah, we had a little intermission last week, and now we're picking up again with Vinny, who's going to introduce us to the art worlds of football fans. There's a
The
great
real football,
of
not
football. Hmm.
the one you actually use your foot on the ball.
That's right, not that Americanized crap. Okay.
No, it's cool. It's just they got the wrong name. Like it's a cool sport. I respect it, but no. But yeah. So uh, first, thanks Ben for hosting this. I'm Vinícius Love, and I want to tell you about the beautiful game. But specifically, I want to tell you about how South Americans experience it because it's very different from what you may have seen. So the first thing that will come as a debate when you mentioned art and football together is the idea of an art football, which can mean basically two aspects of the game. One is having players do impressive techniques and do unexpected things on the pitch that go beyond just passing and shooting. So here, for example, we have Neymar Jr., who's one of the best players in the world right now, doing a cartwheel, which is a skill that very often is said to be like disrespectful. He has gotten yellow cards in the French league, and that generated debates of like whether it's a fair move to do or it's disrespectful. But it really gives you like a move that not many others can give you that sort of movement to get across an opponent and stuff. So that's a whole debate. Another debate is about having your team play expressive and creative football, creating plays and goals that are not just about effectiveness, but also have a beautiful side to it. And this is one of the longest debates on soccer about whether you should have teams built to just win no matter what, like being extra defensive or very pragmatic, or if every team should strive to be as creative and expressive as they could be. And then there's all these philosophies from famous managers and what they believe. And uh, this can go for hours, honestly. If you get on like watch any TV for football here, you're definitely going to see this debate every week. But what I want to focus on is outside the pitch, actually, right around it, and it's how the fans interact with the whole sport. And this is like such a big, daunting area to touch on that I feel like the best introduction is just to show you a video of it. So let me know if it's a bit too loud. Oh, I might have shared with our audio. It's okay. Let me.
Yeah, you need to do the audio.
Yeah. Okay. Let's try again. So this is the supporters for Racing, which is an Argentinian club from Cordoba. And looking at the way they're singing, it might look like they're winning, but this is while they're losing 6-1. And this is like a really big characteristic of Argentinian teams is that they have really passionate supporters that will sing no matter what. It's one of their main. Like if you're in the stadium, you're not singing with them, they'll complain and tell you to leave because they don't want tourists. They don't want like couch fans. They like if you're there for the whole experience. And so I got this book by Eduardo Galeano, which you might know by another book called The Open Veins of Latin America. It's a famous book used to talk about the history of colonialism and like all the marks that Europe and North America have left on our countries. but he was also an extremely talented football journalist, and he would write chronicles in the Uruguayan newspaper. He's from Uruguay, and there's this book called Soccer in Sun and Shadow. It's a compilation of those, which I highly recommend if you want to get the more romantic side of football. And there's this excerpt that basically describes the feeling that is to be a supporter in a stadium here. So I'm gonna read the paragraph. Once a week, the fan flees his house for the stadium. Banners wave and the air resounds with noisemakers, firecrackers, and drums. It rains streamers and confetti. The city disappears, its routine forgotten. All that exists is the temple. In this sacred place, the only religion without atheists puts its divinities on display. Although the fan can contemplate the miracle more comfortably on TV, he prefers to make the pilgrimage to this spot where he can see his angels in the flesh doing battle with the demons of the day. So this intensity comes from the experience of like you're going to soccer matches or watching them in the bar or with friends at your house every weekend, or if you're in Brazil, every Wednesdays and weekends also. And so even though we're watching like up to 70 to or 80 matches a year, every single one of them has an intensity of we have to support this and we have to win, and especially the team has to do good. And so the supporters are often called the player number 12, and because this intensity and this passion can often help carry the team to a win. Like there's multiple occasions where the team will feel like a goal and like will get tense or start to get desperate. And if the supporters do their job, they can help like the players get more focused or at least get more motivated. And a lot of times they can do the comebacks together. And so you often see like supporters from different clubs using the number 12 or shirt number 12 or player number 12 as a name for their group. So here I have images from two different groups. Like first one is Corinthians from São Paulo in Brazil. Then we have in the middle Boca Juniors from Buenos Aires, Argentina. And the bottom is my team, the greatest club ever, Sport Clube Internacional from Porto Alegre, and all of them basically use the same name. In some clubs also, like the case of Boca Juniors, they even retire the number 12 so players can't use it because it's like, oh, the fans are already wearing it, so we can't have two players with the same number. And so no, it's not just about the match itself, but what maintains the club alive is the supporters, and in some cases to even like incredible extents. The first team I showed singing Racing has literally been bankrupt and announced that it was going to close, and the fans just went to the stadium the following match and kept singing, and they just kept like pushing for the club to go on to the point where there was like a bunch of like politics going on that the club managed to keep going. It's also important to note that the relationship here is it's a bit different from what you see in Europe, especially like Western Europe, where the money for soccer really is, because there it's already like the standard for clubs to be private owned, or at least the majority of the clubs to be owned by an enterprise or corporation. And here, just now, we're starting to see that happen. But mostly, like the clubs are non-profit institutions, and they have like supporters can be members. So if you pay a membership, you can vote and you can decide we're going to be the next members of the administration. So here, there is this feeling that the club is ours, and even if the democracy doesn't always work, as we've seen outside of soccer, also we'll then do things that are like a bit more harsh to make it happen. So anyway, all this power, let's say, of the supporters can be shown that oftentimes when a club misbehaves or when the supporters misbehave, the common penalty is for the club to then play without any supporters on a several number of matches, or to only have like a limited amount of supporters, or okay, the supporters can go, but they can't have their banners or their instruments. And you can really see this effect during the pandemic. This is a photo of the first match that happened in Italy after the outbreak in 2020. And throughout the pandemic, you can honestly argue that although the economic losses of not having supporters was devastating for every club, not having the supporters on the stands also made a huge impact on some teams played. Like several different teams played worse because they did not have the supporters pushing them through, or in some cases even they fell into mediocrity because they didn't have the fans there to like argue against them or curse them or demand them to do better. So now I want to go through a couple of ways that the fans express them inside the stadium. And since I already showed it at the beginning, I want to go through first how the chants work, because it's honestly more complex than just having like a set of words or like certain melodies. So here you see my club, and like there's multiple order groups, call them like organized supporters, and like every single one of them has like bands. They have their own instruments, they have drums, trumpets, and their own banners, and they have their own songs also. And what will happen is like every one of them has basically their own culture. They will sometimes fight to each other about who gets the most attention or space, but it can often lead to pretty things. Like I honestly have felt that our team has a lot of luck in having supporters, because it's definitely not every club that has bands. There are instruments that are like often banned in certain countries also, so we're lucky here to have this because I think it adds a lot to the atmosphere. And so there's this culture around the chants where they will evolve over time. Like I can tell you, for example, like the whistling thing on the offbeats of the song is something that was not there when I first started going to the stadium. But across the years, like someone started doing it and it became a staple. And sometimes they'll try to remix the songs or like try to change the rhythm of certain ones, and then sometimes they carry on. Sometimes like they have to go back to the other one because no one's singing. So there's like this evolving culture that also goes beyond just inside one club. So, for example, here I'm gonna first show you what that means. And now I'm gonna show you my club again. That was the best I could get because oftentimes it's too phones don't handle well the supporters. But these are the same songs, and the origin is from Argentina, but I think especially because clubs from my state, like we're in the southest state in Brazil, so very close to Argentina and Uruguay, we have a lot of crossover of culture, and we admire their supporters also a lot. So a lot of times we'll get things from them, and we'll start like base our songs on like melodies and rhythms they've done. But if you do like a simple search from this song, you see that like it's not just like us. This is just 5 examples I've found, but so on the left side you have River Plate, which is the red and white one, which is the fiercest rival of Boca Juniors, and also the Argentina national team also has a chant with this same rhythm, melody, and most of the lyrics. And then on the right side, you have the blue one is Grêmio, which is my club's fiercest rivals. The middle one is Vasco da Gama, which is from Rio, and you have São Paulo, which is from São Paulo. So there's this like almost folk song quality of the songs going across multiple countries. There's like songs you can see happening in other continents, and there's like dumb discussions about like, oh, which club plagiarized the song from the other one, instead of like looking at it as a really cool thing about this being an evolving culture. And but it also moves beyond just like this fan-based fan created chants, because oftentimes you see supporters creating songs based on pop songs or rock songs or any other famous media. So here again, my club, you see them singing "Have You Seen the Rain?" We dance. But instead of asking if our team has seen the rain, they're saying they're gonna kill the rivals. So, and to go to a complete opposite, here's a Japanese club, the Shinzu as Pulse, singing a Brazilian song that was made for a specific Rio club, Botafogo, and they made their own version on top of it. I tried to find like the history of this. Unfortunately, like I couldn't, but there's so many of these crossovers where you just see like I've seen Brazilian songs being sung on like European clubs and African clubs, and it's even to the extent of like they're singing in actual Portuguese. So I also seen my club do "Every Breath You Take" by the Police, or Seven Nation Army is a classic from a lot of clubs also. So all of this creates like this like mixed culture, because then you, especially when there's like events where teams from multiple countries play, such as like the Continental Cups or the World Cup or the Club World Cup, you start seeing these differences, because you see like sometimes there's like Japanese fans that are really into your club because they saw you play once in their country, and since then they started following. Or sometimes like if two organized supporter groups have like an affinity between each other, they'll start creating like alliances between the clubs, and then they'll start being enemies of the other club's enemies also. So there's all like these crazy things that it's honestly even hard to trace unless you're really into deep into the one club's history. So the second aspect you can have supporters is through the visuals. So here again is Boca Juniors, and they do like these gigantic banners and flags that they like to take advantage, because their stadium's very vertical, so they get to do like very large flags. And these flags can go from like honoring players to demanding players to do better or criticizing the organization. They can be threats to the rivals that are playing there. Sometimes they're just like the club's emblems or things like that. But you also see just a lot of stripe flags that are put across to like add details, or you see like tiny flags with like sometimes I've seen on my club, for example, there's one person that brings a flag with my club's colors written Tears for Fears because he's really into that band. And I don't know the context for that, but I've seen a YouTube flag also and a Motorhead one. So people just use that as like a way to express like something they have inside them alongside the support for the club. Because if you see there is the Coca-Cola sponsorships there, and if you know, those are not in red, and that's why because River Plate, which is Boca Juniors' fiercest rival, uses red, and so the color red is not allowed by the supporters around Boca Juniors Stadium to the point that like they had to like change. There's like a bar with the Coca-Cola sign there, and they demanded that the Coca-Cola bar change its branding to black there because they were not allowed to have red. The same happens to my club. Our rivals wear blue. We do not allow our players to wear blue boots inside the stadium, or you can't wear a blue shirt even if it's like like a light blue or just like a shirt with no graphics on it. You can't use it there. This week, a player from my team put a photo of him like using the training jersey for the national team, which is in blue. And then supporters went and like complained to him, like, "Oh, are you thinking of leaving? Are you not interested in our club anymore?" So it gets to that level of like you have to follow the identity of your club. Another thing that's related to the visuals is the flares and smoke bombs and firecrackers. These have been banned a lot across the world, and a lot of times they have, smoke's not good for you. There also been accidents, but they're a staple of how we do parties here for our clubs. Like if there's an important match going, there's gonna be a million flares going around. There's been like there's been videos taken of like mothers taping flares underneath their kids' shirts so they can smuggle the flares inside the stadium. So it goes to a level that is beyond comprehension, but it does make for a pretty ambience. And alongside the flags, you also have other types of manifestations. So on the upper right, this is from Corinthians, from São Paulo. Again, this is like a tribute to past players and idols, and often also used as a reminder, like, look, players, this is who you should be looking after. This is your role model. And the remaining are like types of protests. So the left ones are from when Marielle Franco, which was one of the main figures from the left here in Brazil, was assassinated. So in the same match, it was a derby between my club and our rivals. We had like flags, like the top one says, "We'll never have a dictatorship ever again," and the bottom one is like, "Marielle is present," which was her the motto that we took to like as a protest for her life being taken. And you see the Antifa flags, like if your club a lot of clubs here have Antifa supporter groups, and they often do actions and organizing outside of just the stadium also, especially because racism, homophobia are still very present in soccer. And sometimes it's just like more banal stuff. So the bottom right one is from a decade ago when they banned beer in the stadiums here in an attempt to like reduce stadium violence. But then now we just get shit faced before entering the stadium, and then we still get into fights there. But as I mentioned, like the supporters are not just there to do things inside the pitch. So here's my club again. And this is a tradition we call the Streets of Fire. So whenever there's an important match, we'll go all across the street where our stadium is, and every fan is gonna have a flare. Then we're just gonna like light them all up so the entire street looks is in red flame, red smoke. So the bus goes through it, and this became a tradition for many clubs. I'm just showing mine because I'm biased. Also because ours is really good and it's probably the best one. But so it goes to this crazy ambience like before the match is already like a way to say, look, this is serious. Players, you need to be reminded. There's been matches where it was so intense the players had to like leave the bus and then walk to the stadium while like we were chanting with them. So it's always like is this being like we're together whether you want it or not, but it also can come to like good moments of being together. So for example here there's two photos taken in airports. The left one is Flamengo from Rio de Janeiro. They were this was their bus going to take a plane to go to play the South American Cup finals, and they basically had the whole outside of the airport filled with supporters there. Like we're talking tens of thousands of people there just to like wish the players good luck. Also a bit of like, you know, you have to win this. And on the right side is one of the rivals from Flamengo, Botafogo, also from Rio, where there was over 3,000 supporters on the airport waiting for this Japanese player called Keisuke Honda, which was a very renowned player in Europe. And it's rare to have players for foreign players that are not from South America to play here. And especially for them to be in a club that's been struggling a lot, to get a player of that caliber, even though like, you know, Honda was coming here because it was already at the end stage of his career, so it was harder for him to play at the top level. It became like a reason to celebrate just because it was like some good news for your team that is struggling for so long. So I'm showing these like complete like crazy scenarios, and I was trying to like explain this during the presentation of like where does the passion come from, and it's hard to explain because this is very ingrained in our culture. Like this is not something you see in every club in Europe, or even like clubs here. Like there's a lot of difference. Like they say, for example, that the clubs here in my state, like the rivalry is the fiercest rivalry in the country. Some might say. Well, I definitely believe the Argentinians are the most passionate in our continent. But trying to come up with reasons, I thought that the first thing was football is a really emotional game, and this is due to like the dynamics of it. Like it's different. I recently tried watching an NFL match, and while it was fun, you notice like first like there are points being taken all the time. So it tends to be like there's less comebacks, or like if the comebacks happen, they take over a long period of time. Like the team he really has to work for the comeback to happen. Meanwhile, in soccer, goals are rare. Even if your team is winning by 2 goals, all it takes is 2 mistakes and it's a draw again. And those can happen really quickly. So there's this feeling of like there's always a chance anything can happen at any time. And it also helps that we only have ad breaks in halftime. So it's 2 sets of 45 minutes being played constantly, and you compare it to like American football or even basketball, there's way more breaks and go to ads or like the commentators, and I think that takes away from the tension. So there's even cases where like matches that have no stakes at all can end up leaving a mark on you. And I have a video here from one that's my example. This was in 2012. I was there in the stadium, and it was completely freezing that day. And also our club stadium is literally by the river. That's our stadium name. It's by the river. So everyone was like watching a really drab match. We were completely freezing. And Disco, like we won the match because of Disco. But all I can really remember is that when this happened, we celebrated for like 5 minutes just so we could warm ourselves. Like we were hugging each other and we're like jumping around. Like I saw people doing punches in the air for a goal that was not worth much. And it's been 10 years and I can still remember this. And every person will have stories like that. Uh, Another example is like how football can take generations of history into a single moment. So here you have on the left is like Cologne, which is a club that's more than 100 years old from Argentina. And a couple years ago, they won their first title ever. And this image on the right went viral because it's a whole family crying together. You have like uh, 4 generations of fans in that family crying together, and especially like the grandpa there is like crying, going, "I never believed this day would happen. I thought I would die before this happened." And there's like other ones that went viral from this moment because it was like it's like almost like a nation celebrating a win. And so I'll just let this video speak for itself at first. So it's another person from Cologne where the person actually drilled a hole in the urn of his grandfather so his grandfather could drink with them to celebrate the title win. And then it's also funny to me that he then tries to give wine to the kid. So it's like everyone has to drink because this is such a special night. So yeah, this is what makes us sick, honestly. We just there's so many. I mean, I've been talking for half an hour. I could go for like another hour just giving examples of how crazy this is. So the second reason is that having a team is being part of a community. And this can be like your family, like that's usually how you get your teams. Your mother, your father has a team and you start rooting for them. Or you're usually also it's your local teams. And then, for example, in my city this week is derby. There's going to be a derby match between the two rival teams on Saturday. And so all day we're talking like in the office, or like, for example, I did groceries yesterday, and then like the cashier knows me and knows I root for the rival, so he like started like teasing me, saying we're gonna lose, and then I tease him back. And so the cities here can live and breathe the football, especially on these important weeks. And the community side is also like you start to really get into the identity and the history of your team. So, for example, my team has some really cool history about like it was our rivals at the time when our club was founded. They did not allow black players. And we were the first club in our state to allow black players to play in it. And so we created this identity of like, well, one of our mottos is like, we're the people's club. And of course, deals met with like some racism from the opposite team. And then they would start calling us monkeys. And then our supporters kind of adopted the monkey as like an official mascot symbol. This also like ties into like three stories, like how one of our best team players and like our current best player suffered a really bad case of racism in Europe, and like he like was even punished for like flipping the finger to the racist by FIFA. And from now on, like whenever he scores a goal, even after he came back to Brazil, he always does the Black Panther fist because he wants to remind like how terrible that situation was. Our stadium has a really cool history, but because it was built by our fans. Like our fans did all the labor, and we also like did all the donation of the materials. So was really like it has been renovated throughout the years, but the structure to this day was made like by us, and that's like a really rare thing that happened, and also ties into other cool things in our history. Like the greatest player of all time in our club and our biggest idol, Falcão, worked on the construction of the stadium and then went to like win 3 national championships with us. To this day, is like the greatest technical player we've had. And so you hear these stories from like your family or from friends or from sports programs, and you start creating like this identity uh, relationship, and that's where the passion comes from, to the point where like if soccer gives you a community, it also takes you from others. Like I said, um, there's a lot of rivalry, and sometimes it's not for the good side. Like I mentioned, the racism from the my opponent's team. We also had our bad part where they had the first ever organized LGBT fan group here, and then we started mocking them, calling them deers, because deers is like it's a way of offending gay men over here. And we also have like homophobic chants and all these things. And it can also go to violence. For the hooligans, there's similar things here. And I think one of the best ways to summarize how intense the rivalries can be is the arguably the greatest rivalry of all soccer, which is Boca Juniors and River Plate, both from Buenos Aires, Argentina, both from the same district also. And they created like this really big rivalry from like not just the local aspect, but also they are the two biggest teams in Argentina. So they've been in a lot of finals together. But in 2018, there was something that was really rare. For the first time, there was two rivals playing against each other in the final of the South American Cup, which is the most renowned and valuable trophy you can get as a South American club. And this went in a lot of crazy ways because, it was going to be a home and an away match in the same place against two supporters that hate each other. And so we had cases like two friends had an argument, and one of them then burned the other one's house over who would win the cup. Then you had other cases of violence, of course, but then the ambience was so tense and aggressive that there was like a worry that some fans would have heart attacks during the final. So a local radio offered a peaceful version broadcast of the final where they would like narrate very calmly. They would play waterfowl sounds and birds chirping, and they even had a cardiologist on the commentary team to like give advice on how to calm yourself. And it even went to like crazy levels where while the first match there was Boca Juniors won, during the away match when it would be on River Plate side, there was like so much turmoil outside where like some River fans ended up attacking Boca Juniors players bus, and one of them ended up being injured in the eye. And then like the police had to get into it, and the police is also very brutal for no reason with soccer fans because of the reputation soccer fans has. So like they dropped tear gas, like military tear gas on the streets, and then it just became a chaos. The match had to be canceled to the point where it could not be hosted anymore in that city. It ended up being hosted in Madrid because then CONMEBOL, which is the Committee for South American Football, just took advantage of the situation to like make money out of it. It made like who pays more gets to have the final, which is also very sad because the Libertadores means is a name in honor of like the Simon Bolivar and other like revolutionary people that fought against the Spanish and the Portuguese from colonizing us. So there was also a lot of irony in that. And another example that's like less violent is that if you looked at the supporters for Boca Juniors in those matches, you would see a lot of them dressed as ghosts with a B on top of it and River's colors. Why? Here, a really mark of shame for a club is if your team is relegated, because it means like your team have to play the second division where like the weaker teams are, and a lot of teams have never been relegated. So it becomes a point of like honor versus shame. So in 2013, River Plate was relegated for the first time ever, and Pocahontas has never been relegated. So ever since, whenever they have a match between each other, they'll have these ghosts in honor of an incident that happened like the first time they played against each other for the after River was relegated, where someone smuggled a drone inside the stadium to have a ghost inside the pitch with the B, because we call the second division the B League. So it was like, oh, the ghost is coming for you. And River Plate fans got completely mad over that. The match had to be interrupted because there was turmoil. And ever since, that's like a really big thing. Like my team got the chance to see our rivals be relegated last year. So we had also our ghost costumes. We had caskets made with the opponent's colors. I mean, I was in a class in this school and I was running around jumping and screaming in mute. People didn't know what was happening, but it was that big of an event. But for River Plate fans, that sucked. And that's also a really big part of the passionate expression, is that there's a feeling of powerlessness where you can't, although you can support your team to victory, if the administration is bad, if the team is bad, chances are your team is going to lose and is going to suffer. And so there's a lot of protests and a lot of like other types of direct action, let's say, that are taken in order to like try to make something happen. So the leftmost photo here, for example, is the day that River Plate was relegated. They literally made fires around their stadium, and they broke stuff. They fought the police and all these things because they wanted the current administration out. You also have, for example, like the top photo is the Corinthians team from São Paulo. They brought crosses to exorcise their club from the evil spirits that are the current administration. They'll also, they do draft threats, and they'll break players' cards, which is not cool. And then bottommost picture is our rivals being relegated and being really sad because there was not much to do. And then protests can also be on like a funner note. So here's some famous ones. The top left banner says, "Do you have 2 legs and a social security number? Beware, our administration can end up hiring you to play." Because the current administration of the club was just having an awful team. The bottom one is one of those that became a meme just because of how puzzling it is. I guess the sign says administration equals Jim Carrey, because I guess they wanted to say that there were a bunch of clowns, but somehow that became the sign. And to this day, that's a meme where whenever there's protest, someone will post that, or they'll like call the administration Jim Carrey. And on the right image, this is like they're doing like the topmost is like was the Corinthians at the time president as the devil with all these money bags, because there's a lot of bad politics around soccer clubs, especially in Brazil. Then there are the caskets of all the vice presidents and directors, and then there's like the crosses say like rest in peace, renovation, and transparency. And at the bottom there's rats coming out of the banner saying like get out rats. And they can also go beyond his banners and chants. So here you have some of my favorites. On the left, Palmeiras, which is a club from São Paulo, had supporters go dressed up from as bananas, or from the cartoon Bananas in Pajamas. because here we call players or directors bananas when they're like weak and cowards. So here you can see one of the bananas is also with handcuffed to the faces of one of the directors from the club. The top right image is a sign saying shoot and a bunch of arrows pointing to the goal because Atlético Paranaense from Curitiba was having an awful streak of matches where they could not score. So the supporter was trying to tell them, look, this is how you score a goal in a funny way. And on the bottom right is a photo of, again, Palmeiras supporters throwing popcorn at the team bus, because here also we call players popcorn in case they're like they don't handle well pressure, because then they just pop like corn. So of course, this does not just extend to physical things. So we have memes, especially for younger supporters. This is a way of like getting the frustration out or just mocking the other team. The banter is really strong between rivals. So here is like a meme mocking Flamengo's supporters. So he's saying, like there's a couple, and then the dude says, "Do you want to go to a more silent place?" Then the lady says, "Sure," and then they go to the Flamengo supporters, because there's this meme that the Flamengo supporters are very rich people, so the people that go to the stadium don't actually sing; they're silent because they don't also lose. There's also self-deprecating memes. So this one is called me getting dressed to go watch my team go play, and then the person is dressing the clown shoes. There's also ones that are very like I don't know where to start jokes. So there's a very popular Flamengo player called Gabigol, this is his nickname, where he has like a large butt, and it became a thing to like insult him by his butt because he would get pissed off. And then during a match, there was a viral video of a dude just screaming, "Hey Gabigol, did you have implants put on your butt?" And Gabigol like got mad. And so from then on, like other teams' supporters just started like photoshopping pictures of Gabigol and making his butt larger and larger and larger. And of course, like all things internet, there's also crossover with anime fans. This is, an Evangelion joke. I can't even begin to explain this to you because it's a lot of inside jokes, but it goes to this extent. And of course, there's also Naruto jokes. You can go to very creative ways. And my favorite one of all memes is the Taylor Swift meme. So basically, some crazy dude found out that whenever Taylor Swift released an album, that meant that Corinthians would always he would never lose the match the before the release and after the release for years. So this became a superstition. Whenever like Taylor Swift would announce a new album, they would go, "Oh hell yeah, we're gonna like win 2 matches." So they started like photoshopping Taylor Swift like with the club's kits. The own teams like social media started like tweeting about it whenever a new Taylor Swift album would come out, and to the extent that when last year she released like a re-recorded version of one of her albums, the streak was broken and Corinthians actually lost one of the matches. And then supporters actually started discussing if that actually was the streak being broken, because it's a re-release. So does it actually count? And this kind of like even like foreign music magazines ended up like publishing, and it became a whole thing. Sadly, she never like answered anything about it, which would have been really funny. So to recap, because I've been talking for a long time, why are South American fans so lunatic? Football is a really tense game, and it's very emotional. And that means that there's another inside joke that says that like watching a soccer match is about clenching your butt for 90 minutes because we're so tense that we're actually like getting our whole body clenched. and then we'll say things that like, oh, I'm so tense, not even a Wi-Fi can go through my asshole, for example, is a common saying as a joke. Um, Having a team is being part of a community, be that your team's community or even like your city's community, or even there's like sometimes there's like South American sentiment against European teams because they have the money and they come and buy our best players. And colonization also happens on the soccer level basis. And ultimately, I would say that it's about feeling powerless because in the end, you can't really change how your club is doing. And there's a lot of theses which I agree that soccer is about suffering. But all this makes us a bunch of crazy people. I don't know how this translates to everyone listening right now. I hope you had a fun time. And if you want to learn more about these things, there's two recommendations. So one, which I already cited, is the book Soccer in Sun and Shadow by Eduardo Galeano. There's a really good English translation. It's a bunch of like short essays about various aspects of football. There's also like some critique of these like relationship between professional soccer and like the joy of like amateur soccer, and also how colonization affects soccer, all these things. And there's also a really good documentary free on YouTube by Copa 90, COPA 90, called Derby Days, Super Clásico, Boca Juniors versus River Plate, also called the biggest game of all time, which tells the whole story about the final I mentioned earlier. And it's probably like the best documentary you can see to really get how crazy these rivalries can get. Lastly, if somehow I convinced you that this is actually a good thing and you want to watch soccer, you should join us and be a member of Sport Clube Internacional, because my team is the best ever. Vamos Inter, caralho. And that's it. I hope you had a good time. And bye.
Yeah, go football.
Vamos Inter.
Oh God, sorry everyone. I spoke for so long. First off.
No, there's hasn't been any
Football.
timer this
I
round.
know, but still. I was aiming for 30 minutes, so
That's very fun. Yeah, it's very uh it, there's something weird and warlike about sports that I think is like maybe something to discuss a little bit more about the I just can't, I could never like separate it from like, you see the stuff with the flares and it's like, whoa. And then you like, you think about like battles where you carry the banner and you march to the place, and it's all like, it seems very one-to-one, like enacting that desire to do that. I don't know. I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense like that people have this desire, because I think it, even in like opposite sports communities, I don't, like ravers are like the same. Like, like it's like we all the same, doing this same type of behavior for different things we like or whatever.
It's just like once a critical mass of people comes together and like has to perform an action that unifies them, being like part of one movement, it turns into some really like apocalyptic looking scenario. But because you're saying like, oh yeah, it reminds me of war and everything, but then it's like, sure, there's some sports that literally are adapted from war games, like American football.
Exactly.
But then there's also like, I don't know, it reminded me of some protests too. Just like,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
and there is like a protest element, but like there's just, it's interesting to see like the kind of creativity that comes out when there's this agreement that everybody's gonna be like, all right, we all have to sing something, but like, what's it gonna be? And then it's like, oh, we're gonna sing Credence Clearwater, but like we're all gonna decide that the words are this now. Like, I
And
don't know.
I think it's as worthwhile um to do anti-fascist organizing within it, like as it is any other organization or company or whatever. Like
Yeah,
it's
there's been like
worthwhile.
there's been some occasions where, for example, during the pandemic, during the 2020, uh, there was like this thing where like there was gonna be some pro Bolsonaro protests, and there was like it was just as the Black Lives Matter protests were happening also, and then actually the first time since the pandemic started where people actually went out on the streets was through the organized supporters calling people, and then actually some of them would win like beat some neo-Nazis. Like here in my city, like our the fans of the two teams got together and they actually like went and like got some neo-Nazis out of the street. So I definitely agree that there's like a potential there. It's definitely varies a lot also from place to place. For example, here the organ like in Brazil in general, the organized supporters tend to fight against the organized supporters from uh, the rivals. Like that's the fights that happen. But in Argentina, for example, it's very common for like they call them the organized groups as the Barra Bravas, and it's about like the Barra Bravas fight between the groups inside the same club because they want to have the power, like to be the main one. Because also like there's been a long history of them having a lot of like connection to the government,
Oh my
like
god, they're the Platypus Society.
yeah, there's definitely been like especially during the like late 2000s, like Merkel was having them. Uh, Wait, Merkel is there? I always get confused by the names of the German and Argentinian presidents for some reason. Wait. Sorry, Christina Kirchner, because it also sounds German. I get it. I'm confused. She got them got like the Barra Bravas from like both River and Boca to like support the national team throughout all the campaign for the World Cup, and also like then took them to the World Cup as a payment because inciting a nationalist feeling is a very good way to get like people on your side, or even more. Like the one of the mayors from Buenos Aires got elected because he was previously the president of Boca Juniors, and then he basically spent a bunch of money just to make them win the South American Cup, no matter what. Like irresponsibly spending money, because then he could like fulfill his campaign, and then he got elected like the next election.
Yeah, it's
So
a
there's like all
campaign
these,
army
yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I kept wondering like, what if I was like born in some region where the history of our football club was like super fucked up? Like, what would I do?
yeah.
Like,
There's cases like that, like especially like that's what I meant with like depends on the place. For example, in Italy, there's definitely like more clubs that are outright like neo Nazis. Like Lazio, especially, is the most famous fascist one. Like they have like Mussolini banners and things like that.
So
And but then on Germany, for example, because of like all the guilt and the anti-Nazi sentiment, most of like the supporters groups are at least progressive, and there's even been like initiatives by the clubs. Like now, like one of the bigger clubs there, Borussia Dortmund, like announced like a series of like directives to like get the neo Nazis out of the stadiums. So it's yeah, it's difficult thing. Like I also think a lot about like the rivalry here. A lot of fans from my club who use the racism thing to say that like oh, people that support the other club are disgusting, which I think it's pathetic because then you're just using like an actual cause to like go, oh, my team is better than yours. And also it's funny because the Antifa group from the rival is more active than ours also. So,
Mm.
there's all these differences, but it even becomes weaponizing like by the left, let's say.
Well, I think about there's like strange stuff with, because like my younger brother does this like homeless street soccer league, and I think it's really helpful to like give people that community and think like it's an interesting project. But then there's like some other soccer charities that he's been involved with that I'm like, that sounds like a colonial project, where he like he's like, it's funded by like the German government in Zimbabwe to like start a soccer club. You know what I mean? Like it's very
Yeah.
much like a thing can be utilized.
Yeah, there's a
that
bunch
way.
of like because Brazil has like so many talented players. There's a bunch of like soccer academies here that are from clubs from other leagues, because then they can like get them really young and buy them for a cheap
Yeah.
price, for
Yeah.
example. Or another thing that's very common is like, do you want to go study in the U.S.? If you play for this college's soccer team, then we'll pay for your tuition and things like that.
You get like you go to third world countries and scout children for
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Oof. Very weird. And I also kept thinking about how the Olympics, like the only thing that I watch is figure skating, and figure skating it's so insane. Also, like it's like really similarly insane. But like the art is so dedicated to the individual people skating. And it's like they have this whole metric for grading like what's dance, like there's literally ice dancing, which is different than skating, and there's like all these rubrics for like dancing, and it's like that's like a whole like opposite direction you can take it. I liked your examples with football, like that there's like artistry, because like I don't, because I learned how to appreciate a lot of those moves in figure skating, but like
Mhm.
yeah, that it's there in like a sport where I'm like it all looks the same to me sort of is
Mhm.
like is interesting too. But it's like, yeah, it's weird that sports can go this like other direction where it's like we have this very complicated scoring rubric for art. I don't know. But yeah, the nationalism around it, like particularly but the proxy war between the United States and Russia and figure skating is like it's extremely like there's a lot going on there. And a lot of things get ciphered through it, but I don't know.
It's also interesting to me because, for example, in Brazil, there's like, even in Argentina, there's a saying that's like, uh, oh, for your national team, you fight for, but for your club, you die for it. Like, we are mainly club first people, especially
Yeah.
in Brazil, like as the national team like kind of got worse through time, like it was losing connection to people. And I'm an example, like I don't fucking care how Brazil does in the World Cup. Like to me, it's all about my club, and I hope everyone else does poorly, and that's the thing. Um,
No, that is
so
different.
yeah, yeah, there's like a rejection almost of like a because I'm not like a small occasion. Like that's very common where people just go like, whatever, I don't fucking care. It's for my club to do well. It's almost like a rejection of nationalism in some way, or like making your club the nation,
Regional
not the
regional
yeah,
nationalism.
yeah.
It exists. Europe too, though they have they do, it's like it's, do you think Europe it's like dying, the club culture is dying faster or something?
Well, it's also happening here. The main thing is just like soccer is more and more becoming a product, right?
Hmm.
Example, that final I showed, that was the last final that happened as a home and away match, and now they're all like because the South American committee wanted to make it more like the Champions League, which is the European Cup, which is the most renowned trophy in the world. which is like a final in a neutral place, a single match, because like it can be more there's more emotion in it, it can be more surprising, but also that accounts for like a continent that has like more ways for transportation, so fans can actually go to the final. I mean, the tickets are still very expensive to go to the match, but at least it can be around the city. Like a lot of people will travel just to be around the stadium while it happens. But here, for example, if you're doing a neutral match, for example, this year it's going to be in Brazil, in Brasilia. If you're from Chile, that's like a long trip and it's expensive also. So if your team makes it to the final, you're not going to see it, which is terrible. Like I had the luck to go to the final for my team's first South American win, because there was one match in São Paulo and one here, and these things are just getting taken away from people through time. Also, like there's all the fights over TV rights where like now if you really want to follow your club, you kind of have to resort to piracy, because there's going to be like, oh, this match is like, it's literally, there's matches that are like only on Twitch for this specific channel now. And there's like, oh, this match is going to be on Facebook. And this is like on this cable channel and this or that. And also like tickets in general are getting more expensive. There's a bunch of bans on like things like, for example, the Streets of Fire thing I told, like this week, the South American committee also banned that from happening, to say that it's not allowed. So like that's another tradition being removed. And so we're just getting everything like it's more and more like trying to become a product, which was the thing was like over Europe that was already the case, especially because they're like the clubs are owned by like shareholders.
Right. So that makes you made a mention.
Yeah, and that's happening here now. Like just this like in the last 3 months, like 2 Brazilian clubs got bought for the first. That's a real thing. And I'm a member of my club, and if they end up buying it, I would just stop watching, because it's like then it just becomes even more about like what the administration wants, and it becomes way more like about for-profit things, and then it just ruins it. Like Manchester United is a good example. It used to be one of the biggest clubs ever, like won so many titles and things, and then it got bought like this a family like the Glazers, where they just don't care about the club, and now they suck. The fans don't have much to do other than just hope someone else buys them and hope for the best.
Yeah, we have one football team that's publicly owned, Notre Dame. And people like families like have shares that they like pass down to their children of the team, but it's very I don't know much about it, but it's like there's precedent for it in even the United States. And more clubs should do it, but I don't know how you wrestle the ability to do the deal, and like how do you avoid getting sold out by the administrations. You gotta like literally go overthrow them, I guess. It's kind of a lot. It's a great topic.
I'm trying to not like hog the entire conversation, so if anyone else wants to say something instead. I can keep going if everyone wants to, like, or we can wrap it up. I don't know. Okay, just brought a topic I could talk for another 20 minutes. So I'm just trying to be considerate of everyone.
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot to say on the topic too, because I grew up with so many sports people and I have tried to understand them. But like
let's record a pod episode when I visit about
it. On sports, yeah.
Yeah.
It is such a weird thing. Like like I get like I would understand getting behind my team if it was like something to be proud of, like we built the fucking stadium and we're like a bunch of fucking workers and we own the team. But it's like is never really the case here. And even like the regional, like the broad regional aspects to it with the sports teams here is so severely undercut by like the to me completely inscrutable way that players are drafted
Right.
in the United States. Like I don't understand it at all. Like
Mm.
it's like nobody's actually from the places they play for. Like, like I'm just
Yeah.
like, what is the point of this? This feels gross and like we're
There's definitely an argument to be done, which I'm not gonna agree with, but it's like for the competition, the American systems tend to make it so more teams stay competitive because since soccer has like way less rules about it, it tends to be whoever has the most money keeps being the winner. You know, like and so you're getting more and more like cases where certain teams just keep being the winners, or even worse, like for example, Manchester City is a really famous team, and it's different from the other Manchester team mentioned, the United one. Manchester City is owned by the Qatar state.
that's wild. And is that why
And,
Qatar got the World Cup?
it's involved with that also. And there's like most of the teams now, they're like big. There's like at least 3 of them on the top of my head. They're like it's they're like owned by oil corporations. Also, sorry, it's not by Qatar. Qatar owns PSG from Paris, the Paris Saint-Germain. They owned by this group called the City Group, which comes from like the Abu Dhabi Group. So it's also oil money. And basically what they're doing now is like they're buying a bunch of clubs all around the world. Like, and last year, 5 of the clubs were the winners for the respective leagues. And they now have one in Uruguay. They're looking for someone to buy over here in Brazil. So it's kind of like, okay, this one group is just going to have like the strongest teams in every league.
So then it becomes a way to cement oil's influence on
definitely, like
the dollar supremacy.
For example, the Paris Saint-Germain owner, which is like a sheik, has literally like it's known that he bought the club because he wanted to become a more known figure outside of Asia. You know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Then you have excuses to go meet people from other countries, and
yeah,
for sure.
So also, like I said,
crazy.
thinking about the World Cup.
Yeah, the World Cup. I wonder what the history there is like, and the Olympics too. Like they feel like they're like these well-placed, weird political diplomat situations. And it feels like the US's treatment of the most recent Olympics, I think, might have accelerated some really bad shit that was brewing. Is my read on it. I mean, again, I'm not a fucking expert, but like basically the United States chose to not go to the Olympics at all, not send any diplomats or politicians to. We were like we're the only country that did that, you know. Like it's a very rude, unprecedented kind of thing to do, to equate the host nation to like Nazi Germany or something like that. Like it's like kind of the only close equivalent. It's kind of fucking crazy what's like when you think about it that way. And also the diplomatic ties, like the excuse to for Russia and China to have like better diplomatic relationships during the Olympics probably influenced Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. I imagine. I don't know for sure. That's just a fucking hunch, but I'm not the only one who's saying that. Sports are wild.
Yeah.
I thought the level of fanaticism was kind of really, really different from anything I've seen here. And that thing you said about it being suffering, and I was like, people, I don't really follow sports, but I feel like in the US, the thing I've experienced is like it's not people suffering, but it's more like people have given a lot of time to it. So they relate. Like I'd go to drop off my kid at the daycare, and the person in front of the place would like be listening to the radio and just listening to sports on the radio. And then like another person would go by and be like, oh, and then they would just kind of like show each other that they knew a ton of shit about this stuff. And that was like the purpose of it. So it wasn't rivalry, it was just mutual acknowledgement of like a big involvement in it or something. I don't know. Different.
Yeah, I think there's a certain power trip to it with American fans because they play like it's really inextricably linked with like fantasy football stuff now or whatever.
Oh yeah, I haven't done that either, but I guess that's another like just it's like um technical, just being an expert on it, and analyzing. Like people look at baseball as just this completely abstracted statistical thing, and to a degree that's one time I worked at this like animal like dog shelter place, and one of the people are like, oh, my job that I do is analyzing, like how they have all these statistics, and this person was the person who like went through the like compiled them. It was like a full-time job that somebody has to do that, like I guess somebody has to do it. With like the hyper focus that we've developed, like in our society, it would make sense to say like somebody has to do that, even though maybe they don't. uh, I thought that a lot of the things I saw in the pictures that you showed were interesting, to the extent that like how much the fans were just giving up their experience to get the effect across. Like, here's this banner, now no one can see. It's like,
yeah, I've definitely had like friends, for example, who they would go to the organized, like they're a part of, and I was just watching them match, like as a common supporter. And then our team won, but it was like by a last minute goal. And he left the stadium thinking we had drawn because he did not notice the goal happened because they were already jumping like crazy that he couldn't like notice. That's like at the most important part of the event happened. So it's to that extent, yes, it's very much like the show is more important than the match itself because you have to like show the support.
Yeah, the smoke thing looked pretty rough to me. Like the thing where the whole light up the street thing. I think I looked like somebody who would be asphyxiated by that. But it looked really cool. Just like
yeah. Yeah, their skin is more like, if it gets too much smoke inside the stadium, they will stop the match. So to force like the supporters to put the fires out.
yeah, like I remember some time in my, not childhood, but like teen, there visiting people in Oregon, and like they had fireworks show in a stadium, and it was like, I'm not going to that. It's too much. And people came back like, damaged. Not really, but
I mean, when I was getting whenever I get really into like a sport thing, I get really compelled by like the underdog story aspect to it, and like the really interesting one in figure skating this cycle is this Mexican figure skater named um Donovan Carrillo, and uh Mexico like hasn't had a a figure skater in the Olympics in like decade, like 50 years, like some crazy amount of time. Like, and it's because like, of course, like South American countries are at a severe disadvantage when it comes to competitive skating. There's like, it costs way more to maintain ice skating rinks in the South, and you know they don't have as much money as European countries do to dedicate to skating. And there's not even like competitive stadiums for him to train in, really. Like he has to go train in other, he's never trained in like the proper competitive size stadium. So it's like severe like underdog story that you even like make it in the Olympics or whatever, despite all those like hurdles. And then it becomes like, yeah, like I'm like falling into like the nationalist fervor of it, like go Mexico. Like, that's how I get sucked. You can get sucked in, I guess.
Yeah, I try to watch women's wheelchair basketball when I can, which is almost impossible except for during the Paralympics. Um, and like there's no place to practice it here in New York City,
It's wild.
or learn it or anything.
It's wild that we don't have it.
Yeah, like I've tried to find where I could like play a little basketball, and then I was like, no, can't find it. It doesn't exist. It seems like related to like veteran stuff or something, but you need a specialized wheelchair to play most, or like specialized equipment, or a person to lead you to practice for any like Paralympic events, which was like I also like the rugby where you need like this special cage around your chair so you don't smash into each other's legs. But it's like such a niche, like everyone just like there's nowhere to practice this in like anywhere. So it's just like this basically whoever could play it gets to go to it. But also there's no, I feel it's just like too small to have any type of fan. There's just like just nationalist stuff at the Olympics, and I think there's only national teams. But there's no like things like that. I was also thinking about how I like vaguely remember going to baseball games and all of the fan stuff are like led by the announcer guy. There's no like independent fan activities at all. I don't know if there's any. Are there like announcer led stuff at football games, or are there just like it's now all like under fans?
Well,
Yeah,
Americans are so gross. We just like copy what commercials do. It's true. We have some like classic ones, but like, yeah, I'm sure they're rooted in some ancient evil, like our ice cream machine songs, you know. I'm serious. I'm serious. You trace any of that shit? You trace any of our like not all, of course. Like there's some rooted in like Black liberation, but like a lot of our like American folk shit is just awful. Dog shit.
we can have cool. I think it's the only crowd I've seen from Americans that can actually pull something fun.
Sure, I believe it.
From the 2 minutes of wrestling I've watched ever.
Oh, wrestling, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, wrestling is queer and for freaks, and it's good. So that makes sense. I mean, and it's also fake as hell, and nobody cares. It's theater. Wrestling is theater.
Yeah.
Wrestling fans are really funny. I support them. There's also like a much more of a club mentality for wrestling in the United States. It's like a really good point. Like there's local scenes for it, like there are local music scenes, like it kind of indistinguishable. It's not like super serious like soccer, but
Mhm.
it that culture definitely exists. I used to go to Kaiju Big Battle, which was people in kaiju outfits. It was awesome.
Mm,
Well, we did it. We talked about sports. How
yeah.
do we feel?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good place to end it.
I thought it was great.